Bear with me here. This is the Finance Committee meeting. We last met back in November. It's Tuesday, the January 18th, 2022 Finance Committee meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order, but first I want to read a brief paragraph about our remote meeting format. Please be advised that all of the City Council Finance Committee members will be remotely attending this meeting by electronic means. In compliance with the recent recommendations, amendments to the Open Meetings Act, the Mayor of the City Council has determined that it is not prudent or practical to conduct an in-person meeting due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And it is not feasible to have the City Council members or members of the public physically present at the meeting due to the pandemic disaster. The city will be providing members of the public with various opportunities to watch or attend this meeting, as well as provide public comment at this meeting. For example, members of the public can participate remotely in the meeting by following the public audience link, which is provided in Zoom, and which will provide both video and audio means to attend the meeting. So I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask the Director of Finance to call the roll.
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor Pantaleon.
Here.
Chairman Morris.
Here.
Alderman Karas.
Here.
Alderman Rummel.
Here.
Alderman Notes.
Yeah.
Alderman Prushlock.
Here.
Alderman Kashgarian.
Here.
Alderman Bushman.
Here.
Alderman Weber.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The first item on our agenda is consideration of minutes from the Finance Committee meeting that we held on November 8th, 2021. Are there any questions or comments on those meeting minutes from the members? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So move to approve the minutes.
And a second? Second. Director Holub, would you take a roll call on the vote?
Certainly. Mayor Pantaleon.
Aye.
Chairman Morris.
Aye.
Alderman Karas.
Aye.
Alderman Rummel.
Aye.
Alderman Notes.
Aye.
Alderman Prushlock.
Aye.
Alderman Kashgarian.
Aye.
Alderman Bushman.
Aye.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. For members of the public, this meeting will probably run about 20 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, with the items on the agenda, at which time we'll adjourn the meeting and take a short break in order to then reconvene the City Council meeting following this one. So I think about 20 minutes, but we'll see. So the third item on our agenda is going to be a presentation by Director Holub. It's about our investment program recommendations that we had talked about back in the fall. So Director Holub, would you like to proceed?
Great, thank you, Chairman Morris. Diane is going to bring the slides up for us. We just have a few slides to review. As Chairman Morris noted, we did present this item at the October Finance Committee meeting, but based on the content and timing of the evening, we did not take any action to allow the committee an opportunity to review the materials. So we'll move on to the investment program recommendation slide. Next slide, Diane. Just by way of introduction, the material in the packet was the same as the October 18th packet with one small change, and I'll point that out when we get to that particular slide. Okay, so the next slide, this has been updated from the October meeting, but just to give you an idea of current comparable rates, I would note that this chart only goes up to 1.5%, so the increments here are pretty small. But as you know, the city is limited on how it can invest its operating funds by the Illinois Public Funds Investment Act and the city's own investment policy. And as you know, under state statutes, we cannot invest operating funds in equity investments similar to what fire and police pension can do. So we're very limited on the types of investments we can make. And so this chart is just a comparison of the current interest rate environment for those types of investments that the city can invest in. The two items to the left that are noted, the Lake Forest Bank and Trust rate of 0.41% and the Illinois funds, are the two depositories in which we currently have all operating funds of the city. We have a very generous agreement with Lake Forest Bank and Trust, and we earn a very competitive interest rate on our deposits there. And those deposits are fully collateralized, so they're fully liquid and no risk. And so you can see that the other investment vehicles available to us don't provide a lot of additional yield at the current time, nor has it in recent years with low interest rate environments. Those four solid columns in the middle, those represent current rates for, current rates for CD and Treasury investments. And those are fixed in term, which is why I've put them solid. And those represent 3 to 5 year maturities on CDs and Treasury obligations currently. I've also categorized these from the left to the right based on risk. So those to the right represent more risk based on the nature of investments included in those items. So we've not had a lot of opportunity to generate a lot of additional yield by moving into different investment vehicles. But we have gradually over the last few years developed a comprehensive program, updated our investment policy, created an investment procedures manual so that we're poised to move into investments when the timing is right. So you can move on to the next slide. We're asking the committee to consider 3 actions this evening. The first is revisions to the investment policy. We are only making a small revision in what is recommended to you this evening. It is only to incorporate language to address the Illinois Sustainable Investing Act. The provisions of this act are recommended. The city's not mandated to use them. But many of the communities in Illinois are adopting some form of language consistent with the Sustainable Investing Act. So the only change in the investment policy is to include some language in regards to sustainable investing. And then the one change from October, which we talked about at the meeting, was we have changed this to from shall to may. And that is reflective of best practice on incorporating this act into an individual municipality's investment policy. And so we recommend that update for your consideration this evening. The next slide. The second recommendation relates to segmentation of the city's portfolio. This is actually required under the city's investment policy. And so we're bringing this forward to you as a staff recommendation. And what it does is it takes our cash and investments and divides them between a liquidity segment and a core segment. The liquidity segment being that money that we want to keep really liquid and have available for operating purposes. And those in the core segment being those in which we could enter into longer investment maturities for CDs or treasuries. And so what we've done is we've gone through each individual fund of the city and divided them into categories in this chart for you and made a recommendation in that category of the percentage range we recommend for liquidity and for core, so a longer term investment ability. And then we've provided notes on the basis for which we've made that recommendation. So we've looked at different aspects such as, the reserves in a particular fund, the long-term 5-year forecast for a particular fund, and those that have specific declining or limited fund balance reserves, and taken those and given you range recommendations for the liquidity and core for those. So I'll pause first because I know this is a pretty new concept. We introduced it in October, and just want to pause to see if anybody has any particular questions regarding the segmentation recommendations.
Elizabeth, maybe it might be helpful, I hate to put you on the spot, but how much money are we talking about that is on deposit with Lake Forest Bank and Trust?
So currently, I think we're about $80 million.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Alderman Bushman, did you have a question?
Yeah, Director Holub, looking at this breakout here, I take it the first category, general funds down to self-insurance. That's where the major dollars would be if you attributed dollar amounts to the different segments you have there.
Right, that's true.
And I know we've talked about the reserves we have and the significant amount of reserves and the return we're having. And is this different where you're looking to get 60, 80% into a higher return? Would that be a higher return than we've had in the past for those sort of reserves?
Yes, that would be the plan, so that when a long-term investment vehicle, a CD or a treasury, starts showing an interest rate return that warrants, tying those funds up for 3 to 5 years, this would allow us that opportunity. Now, I would say that we would not move to 60 to 80% immediately. We'd move there gradually, but we're just providing you kind of the range at which we'd like to get over time when investment rate yields warrant that.
It may be timely because I think we're getting indications of the treasury rates going up, and how soon, how fast, who knows?
Yeah, and that graph, the internal rates on CDs and treasuries had actually bumped up a little bit from the October. So that was an updated chart, but we have seen some increases in the 3 to 5 year CD and treasury rates since October. So yeah, I think we're getting close to a point where that's going to make sense.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll move on to the next slide, which is summarizing our third recommendation, which is also a requirement of the investment policy, which is to establish benchmarks for which we will measure our return compared to benchmarks to do that for investment reporting for both the City Council and for the public. So we have divided the recommended benchmarks between the liquidity segment and the core segment. For the liquidity segment, we've recommended 3. First, the Illinois Metropolitan Investment Fund Convenience Fund Rate 30-day yield, because those are going to have the types of investments that we would invest in the liquidity segment of dollars in. The 90-day U.S. Treasury bill rate, so reflecting a short-term 3-month U.S. Treasury rate, and the Standard & Poor's Government Investment Pool Index, using the 30-day net yield for the benchmark. So those all representing more short-term liquid type rates for which you could compare the rates of return we're getting on the liquidity segment. The second category are the core segment benchmarks. For now, we've recommended 2 benchmarks for that. First being the Illinois Metropolitan Investment Fund 1 to 3 year fund, 1 year net total return. That is an investment pool that a lot of Illinois communities invest in. This is a pool that is geared towards investments that can be invested for 1 to 3 years. You have fairly short liquidity. You can draw funds on that in 5 days, but the underlying investments in that pool have a longer term. And so we feel that's a good comparable rate for the core segment and the 3-year U.S. Treasury rate. I just included a footnote there that if the city later started to move into corporate obligations in the investment portfolio, we would probably recommend a third benchmark for the core segment that had some core corporation bonds included in it. And I think that is it. If we move to the next slide. So just in summary, we're just presenting and recommending action by the committee this evening on the proposed revisions to the city's investment policy, segmentation of the city's portfolio as outlined in the packet and in the slides, and the proposed benchmarks for investment reporting. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Is there a feeling that we're going to be able to move into corporate investments at some time in the future?
Our investment policy allows for it currently. We used to be limited in fairly short duration, but there was a statutory change a few years ago that allowed municipalities under the Illinois Public Funds Investment Act to go out to 3 years on corporate bonds. Our investment policy currently limits corporate bond investments to a high rating of corporate bonds, but we do authorize it in our current policy. I think we still have our chairman. I know he said he was having some issues with his internet connection, so he might go off video, but I thought he would have audio.
Elizabeth, do you think it might make sense to move on to the grant program update and we can come back to the action items once Chairman Morris, oh, I think we just lost him. Yeah, I'd suggest we do that and we can come back to the action items when he rejoins the meeting.
Okay, great.
Although, let me suggest this maybe, that the council appoint the mayor, chairman pro temp for this to take us through. I don't think there are any other comments that we had under this item of business, so we can maybe take the recommended action and votes on it now.
Sure.
Any opposition to asking the Mr. Mayor to act as chairman pro temp for the finance committee?
Is that a motion or a second?
I'll defer to the parliamentarian on that.
Kurt, would that require a roll call vote?
Not if we're just in the committee meeting here and if we're just going to be moving it along. I don't believe that we have to have a formal vote to appoint a chairman pro tem.
Okay.
Okay, well, in that case, I would entertain a motion to approve the recommendations.
So move.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote, please.
All right, Mayor Pandeleon.
Aye.
We'll pause on Chairman Morris. Alderman Karas,
Aye.
Alderman Rummel,
aye.
Alderman Notes,
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack,
Aye.
Alderman Gashgarian,
Aye.
Alderman Bushman,
I
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
Motion is approved, 8-0. Thank you very much.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the review of the, I keep seeing, there he is. Okay, I hereby
All right.
resign.
Where are we, George?
We just approved the recommendations for the investment policy and we're moving on to the grant program.
Very good. All right.
Would you
Well,
like me
Director
to
Hunt,
record a vote for you, Chairman Morris, on those?
I'm sorry, what?
Would you like me to record a vote for you on those investment program?
Yes, I approve. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry for the difficulties.
No problem.
All right, go ahead with the.
All right,
next-
so the next is a grant program update. So we're going to have just a few slides on this. But as you know, about a year ago, January of 2021, the City Council approved 2 agreements related to a grant program. Just one more slide, Diane. First, entering into a partnership with the Ferguson Group, located in Washington, D.C., to provide grant research and additional writing and support in identification of grant opportunities, and an agreement with Carasoft Technology for their eCivis grant administration software. And so as we closed out the first year of that grant program, we thought we would come back to the Finance Committee and just provide a brief update, informational report to you on the first year. Next slide. So included in the annual report document in your packet, we've summarized the activities that took place over the course of 2021, summarized in this slide. So with the Ferguson Group ended up doing 2 rounds of meetings with all the operating departments of the city. They did one initially to make introductions, gain an understanding of our operations, and understand the funding needs and priorities of the operating departments. They took that information and developed a comprehensive needs assessment. that was provided to the city in March of 2021. It was a pretty voluminous document, so we took a few weeks to allow the operating departments to review that needs assessment. And then they did a second round of meetings with the operating departments to discuss the needs assessment and identify, what corrections or what clarifications the Ferguson Group might need to better understand us as an organization. Throughout the year, they have provided grant notifications to operating departments as opportunities came up. Those are provided by email, and then they request a response from the operating department on whether there's interest to pursue those particular grant opportunities. Throughout the year as needed, they've provided assistance with application review, pre-application and discovery regarding grant opportunities and what requirements, underlying requirements would be part of those grant applications. Debriefs on grant opportunities that were applied for and were unsuccessful to gain a better understanding of how the city could be more competitive in the future. And they provide a monthly tracking report. I did provide the December tracking report in your packet, so you saw what kind of reporting they're doing. We receive that each month, and that's provided to the executive staff. As far as the eCivis Grants Administration, loads of commendation to Assistant Finance Director Diane Hall. She has really taken this through the entire process. She spearheaded the implementation and user training. We have 5 users in the city currently that use the grant administration software. And we have developed a user guide and then also a report template that we can download at any given time into Excel. And then, by eliminating columns and doing a few formatting specifications, provides us a good report as needed to meet the needs of our particular reporting audience. So a lot of activity has taken place through the year, and we've been very pleased with how everything has gone. Next slide is just some statistics. I provided this chart in your packet as well. So this is really just the numbers for 2021. They're high-level metrics, and the Ferguson Group identified for us 105 grant opportunity notifications. I would note a couple things about that. First, they did indicate that being the first year of the relationship with the city, they would throw everything at us. Anything that they thought might be appealing to us, they would send us so that we have an opportunity to review. And throughout that process, they learned about the organization, where, where we had particular interests, where we didn't feel we qualified. And so we knew the first year number was going to be high, but it was just exposing us to all of the funding opportunities possible. And of those 105, you see in the next category, we have either pursued or plan to pursue 18. So we have actually applied for 11 grants included in the 105. And we have 7 on our upcoming watch list. So the grant application period and particular requirements haven't been released yet, but we have interest in them, and we want to pursue those when we have the formal release and application period is open. So that's about 18. So about 18% of the total. I think what you'll see in 2022 is probably fewer notifications from the Ferguson Group, but a higher percentage of applications. So I think it was just a year where we all got to know each other and worked out what areas we were interested in. I would also note that in 2021, that being a new federal administration results in a higher number of grant opportunities. So as the presidency changed, new grant opportunities, new grant programs were initiated. And so typically the first year of an administration is going to be a higher volume of grant opportunities available. The bottom section, just wanted to note that of the 11 grant applications submitted, we were awarded 3, and we're waiting on 6. So 9 out of 11 have either been awarded or we haven't received word yet on those. The other two where we were, I'm sorry, the other two are pending submittals. So those are applications that are in process and are going to be submitted in the next probably month or 3 weeks. I did note to the side, we've left out of these statistics the COVID-related grants. So we've applied for 4 COVID-related grants. That's the ARPA and 3 FEMA. But because those were not competitive and they were available to everyone, we did not include them in the statistics. So of those 4 COVID funding, we received 3 of those. And we have 1 FEMA application pending that should be successful because we've already done 2 of them. It's the same types of items, it's just for the next period of time. So we should be successful in all 4 of those. And then just included at the bottom, 2 grant application reviews. These were formal application reviews where we actually, on an hourly basis, engage the Ferguson group to review the application and work with the department on the submittal. Next page. Also included in the annual report are some recommendations. I think this was a year of good learning for the Ferguson group as well as our entire organization. So we included some recommendations for 2022. Those are to focus on a list of prioritized projects and programs. So actually give that to the Ferguson group at the beginning of the year so that they know specific key projects we're very interested in seeking grant funding for. We'll look at that list on the next slide. Also to emphasize projects identified in the 5-year CIP. So those projects that you've already seen at the November capital budget workshop, whether they're priority 1, whether they're priority 1 and F, or whether they're priority 5 and require outside funding, those lists and that grant, that project detail will be provided to the Ferguson group for additional information for them. Instead of department meetings this year, we do plan to offer the use of an online portal that's available through the Ferguson group for operating departments to go in and update any priorities or funding needs that have changed from last year. But we have offered the opportunity for all operating departments to hold another annual meeting for those that are interested in doing that. The Ferguson group will take all of that information and update the needs assessment. They'll do that each year. And so they'll provide us that needs assessment. We can review and provide feedback to them. We are talking to the Ferguson group about providing some grants training for operating departments. We'll look to the operating departments to let us know what they really need. But I think one of the planned topics will be just preparation of applications and what things to keep in mind about making applications, especially for federal grants, because that's where the Ferguson group really has their expertise. And then also to increase time for application review. So we're urging departments, if they are interested in grant opportunities, to kind of get aligned with the Ferguson group early on to make sure that we're maximizing the opportunity for them to provide valuable input on making our application submittal as competitive as possible. The next slide, we talked about the prioritized projects. So as you know, the city has for a few years now been taking the approach of funding design the year prior to construction. And so many of the projects for which you've recommended approval for design in fiscal year 23, the construction dollars are either in 1 and F, 1 not funded, or in 5 requiring outside funding. So those are certainly high priorities for us and included on the list. Other projects such as Waukegan, Everett, and Everett intersection improvements, of course, we have received grant funding related to that project, but we're now looking for the possibility of getting additional grant funding either for the right-of-way acquisition or for the expanded scope for the westbound right-hand turn lane that was added to the scope of that project. But anyway, we've gone through, these are the specific projects we've identified as kind of the high priority ones that we would like the Ferguson group to really focus on in the coming year. And next slide is just kind of a wrap-up slide. So as I mentioned, included in your packet was both the December grants tracker, just so you could see the format of the reporting the Ferguson Group is providing, and then the eCivis grant report. So you can see what kind of information is available in the grant administration software and available for reporting as needed. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. This was mostly informational, but we look forward to another great second year with the Ferguson Group. I think overall the operating departments have worked very well with them.
Director Holub, if I may.
Of course.
A couple of questions. First, in terms of the 2021 statistics, if my mathematics is correct, where we submitted 11, 3 were awarded, 6 are pending. Does that say that 2 were denied?
2 are pending submittals. So we're in the process of submitting those applications for those 2 right now. So they are
So
neither.
that is part of the 11. These other 2 are part of the 11 that if you break it down, and 3 were awarded, that we were successful, 6 are pending, and you say 2 more are still pending?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Second question, you talk about prioritizing, and that certainly makes sense. And again, this is a great presentation to give us comfort that we're doing a great job trying to get the funding to the extent we qualify for it. You talk about in your write-up looking to pursue moderate to high likelihood for funding. High likelihood is easy to define, but do you have a quantifying category for what you say is moderate for when you would pursue it versus when you would not?
I do not. And I think that what you would hear from the operating departments is that every grant is a little different. And I credit them because it does take time to kind of go into the grant materials, the requirements. Is there an income threshold that we might not meet being a wealthier community? Are there demographics that are a factor in the decision on the grant that we may or may not meet? So we have to closely analyze that. So we do ask the Ferguson Group to help us assess the likelihood of being successful so that we're not spending a lot of staff resource time on a grant application that's not likely to be successful moving forward. So I would say it's not really a metric, it's more a nuance of working through each individual grant.
And it could be also viewing what sort of return you'd get. Obviously, a higher return may have more merit to pursue than one that would be more questionable.
Certainly.
Last topic, our last question relates to items we've seen in the news of late where federal funding for bridge projects they talk about 27 billion, and Illinois just announced that they're going to get 1.4 billion for bridge projects. And in our council meeting, we have before us some engineering proposal expenditures for the Illinois and Woodland pedestrian bridges, which are not on your priority list. I'm wondering if you could share the reason why we're pursuing that outside of the funding.
Sure. So the Illinois and Woodland pedestrian bridges specifically are based on the high priority threshold of those improvements, and Public Works not recommending that we hold off on that work. We have several bridge projects identified for which we could easily pursue grant funding for construction as we complete design. So we felt it was better to go ahead with those projects and look instead to Lake Woodbine Bridge, for example, as being the one where we would apply for grant funding.
Right, and or use another word, safety was a consideration in moving forward post haste rather than delay and not being sure going forward.
Certainly, yes.
Thank you.
Alderman Romo.
Director Holub, it caught my attention when you said that the Ferguson Group is focused very much on federal grant money. Maybe educate me a little bit, but it seems to me that, for example, that Burr Oak project was a state grant that was administered through stormwater management at the county level, right? So it's always struck me that stormwater management at a county or regional level should be concerned about the ravine structures in our communities. And so I just can't believe there's not some money out there available for those kinds of projects, probably not at the federal level, but maybe more at the state or even the county level. So I just want to be sure that we're looking into those kinds of possibilities too for grants.
Yes, and I agree. We do, the Ferguson Group certainly works with the state grants and the pass-through grants through CMAP and the county and the SMC. We felt the value add of the Ferguson Group was giving us exposure to federal grant opportunities. So we do work on grant, they even go down to the foundation level, where local foundation, nonprofit foundation grants, they provide us information on. But certainly we do look both at the state and the county grant opportunities as well.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Can I add a little story for everybody's benefit here?
Sure.
I know Jason knows where I'm going with this, and probably Jed does as well. There's an art to this, and part of the art is because these grant applications are very time-consuming to put together. You want to make sure you have a good batting average, for lack of a better word. You don't want to be spending a lot of time putting grant materials together and then not getting the money or not qualifying. So some of the things Elizabeth was talking about, I think, are really valuable inputs that the staff needs to be cognizant of, so that we're not chasing our tail on some of these things. And I will present a case in point that Alderman Rummel just mentioned. We, as we all know, the Burr Oak grant was awarded to us. It was required to be a shovel-ready project, and we actually had, because we did this design effort beforehand, we had a shovel-ready project that was supposed to start this spring. Actually, it was supposed to start last spring, or maybe even the spring before that. The grant money is being administered by the state through the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, which is also the organization that is handling all the ARPA money from the federal government. That's an organization that had no infrastructure for administering grants when all this money landed in their laps. We are one boilerplate intergovernmental agreement away from having this money released. It was supposed to be released in January. We inquired last week because we hadn't really heard anything, and we were told, well, we have all kinds of things at the county level. This is what you're talking about is a sub-grant. So that's not even really on our radar screen right now. It's going to be probably several months. And we've got a bid that's going to go bad on us. So it's going to have to be rebid. And there are a number of additional state requirements that may be imposed on us. And we may find ourselves, and this is just a word to the wise, we may find ourselves in the next 60 days or so having to make a decision about whether to continue to pursue this grant money or not. If we put a shovel in the ground, the grant money is no longer available to us. So this is a classic case of the law of unintended consequences. They demanded a shovel-ready project. We delivered them one. They gave us the grant. They committed the grant, but now the administration of it is basically stopping us from moving forward, or the lack of competent administration of it. So this is we can't just assume that all these grants that are available to us are actually worth pursuing, and even the ones we think are worth pursuing. And this is painful because it's $2.5 million. But at some point we have to move forward on this project, and so just an FYI to the council that and this history suggests that the stuff that's administered through the state and the county tends to have a lot of these kinds of problems. So hopefully one of the things we might want to look at in this process is figuring out how these grants are going to be administered, and whether we can expect that it'll come directly to us, or whether it's going to have to go through these filters that oftentimes, get in the way. So sorry about the long-winded story, but it's a real, really disappointing situation.
Well, and I'll just note that, to Elizabeth's point earlier about asking the Ferguson Group to focus more on federal grants, as a result of some of the frustrations that have been experienced with state grants, sometimes in just reimbursements taking much longer than anticipated to be received well after the projects are completed. It was our hope that pursuing federal grants might provide a little more predictability to the process, and so that was part of the motivating factor behind it. But to Alderman Romel's question, we'll certainly continue to pursue state grants when they make sense, and county and other local grants.
Well, I think that was always the word on it. I don't know if Mike Thomas is on the call, but I know that he expressed years ago his hesitation to go down this road for precisely those reasons, that by the time you get them, there are strings attached, and you're lucky to get it, and it can take years. And I think that really for a long time, we almost had a policy of, not a policy, but we didn't apply for a lot of grants as a city for exactly that reason. So I think this is kind of a new venture for us. And I think we're sort of finding our way as we go and seeing if it pays off, or if we go back to this isn't worth our efforts. So thank you for your timely report. I think there's a lot to be learned from it.
Welcome.
Well, very good. Other comments, questions? Elizabeth, thank you very much. I know you and I have talked about getting more grants. The more we can get, the better, but they are challenging. So it's nice to see the progress you're making, and keep going. Okay, I don't think we need to vote or anything. It was just an informational update. All right, thank you. If there are other questions, then we'll move on to the other business. There are 4 items, I won't read them all, that are in the packet. They're information for the committee members. There's no action required. I'll just note there's the December 21 flash report, the 5-year capital improvement plan update, a draft about the innovation and technology 5-year capital plan, and a pension consolidation update. There are any questions on any of those? If not, thank you very much. This brings us to an opportunity for the public to address our committee. I think we'll put up a slide indicating that you can use the raise hand function, or you can call our number, which is 847-810-3643. So we'll wait for just a few minutes and see if there's anyone in the community that wants to raise a question or a comment. No. While we're waiting, when we finish again, it's about 6:15. We'll take George, a 5-minute break and then reconvene for the city council.
Yeah, let's, well, assuming we adjourn here promptly, let's try to reconvene at 7:20.
7:20 or, yeah, 7. I'm an hour different, so.
I know, you're in a,
different time zone.
Now,
Thank you.
should we terminate here and come back on another link, or stay here?
I think you can just stay here and we'll just reconvene. We'll adjourn, take a little break, and then reconvene.
Okay, don't leave the meeting per se, yeah.
Correct.
Correct.
I don't think we got a separate link for.
Yeah, I didn't recall seeing any.
No. No.
Callers at this time.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, there is a raised hand in the audience.
Okay. If you do, Jason, take that one, and I don't have access to that.
Yeah, she's been promoted to the screen. You can go ahead and begin your comments.
Hello, City Council. This is Rami Lopez. I was just listening in and I was just curious about this worry that the state is so slow on approving a grant, a big grant. What happens in a case like that? Do we go into high gear and start calling our elected officials and, you know, the governor and our state senators, or do we just shrug about it?
Oh, I'll let our mayor answer that because he's been actively doing all those things.
Yes, lots of phone calls, lots of emails, lots of other channels being explored to try to break this loose. It should be a very perfunctory thing. It shouldn't require a lot of bureaucratic involvement at this stage of the game, but we're sort of looking for a message to come down from on high to the various people in the appropriate bureaucracy to move this to the top of the pile.
We'll continue to do that. I know he's worked all the levers in terms of our elected officials, and I think they've made representations. They're interested in getting it fixed, so. Thank you. Any other questions or raised hands?
Looks like none at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, that will bring us to an opportunity to adjourn. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. And then we will take a 5-minute break and come back, it looks like at 7:23.
Move to adjourn.
Motion, second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? No opposed. Our Finance Committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. See you in 5 minutes.